Standards-based grading for me is exactly what it sounds like. It's grading based on standards.
It's literally taking the state standards for any subject that we're teaching and applying them so that the kids are actually reciting exactly what they need to learn for the year. I can do this in their form of statements, and really just looking at their, like Christy said, the proficiency in that set standard.
But I love it because instead of getting that really large test where a kid's getting a 70 or an 80, they get to see, oh, it's very much this particular standard that you are missing.
The students themselves are more aware of what their math skills, strengths, and weaknesses are. It means that they're no longer looking back and just saying, okay, I failed that quiz, when can I come redo it? They're actually able to say, hey, I can't do blank. When can I learn how to do that? And so the conversation around learning is far more focused and efficient. I know more about the kids at any given point than I would have otherwise.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's like the biggest thing for me, like the convos we have now, like from me to the kid or from me to the parent, are so much more like, I guess, clear and like focused. Because now, like Hoffman was saying, instead of saying like I failed the equations quiz, it's like I didn't do well on that. I can solve two-step equations. That's what we spend our time like reviewing and remediating, instead of just like, okay, we don't know where to start. So it's as a remediation piece during office hours has been like super helpful. I just is focusing on zeroing in on what they need to do.
Students know exactly what they need help on, exactly where they're struggling, and what standard they've mastered. So I think definitely makes kids more aware of what they need help in, rather than just coming to office hours and being like, I need help, I don't know what, but I have a C in class. So kind of shifts the conversation that way to take ownership.
I feel like standards-based grading really pushes the kids to self-advocate.
For algebra honor students in particular, that it has taken the focus away from checking off and completing all their work to making progress on their learning. They do still ask, is this for a grade? But it's decreasing in frequency as the year goes on.
Right off the bat is the clarity, because when the kids contact you, they might say, Mrs. Nichols, I was wondering how I can improve on describing my classes in Spanish when I write. The other thing that I have found to be much more powerful is while there are kids that are focused on their grade and they want to know just how to get that 4, they're really looking at that kind of independent piece, that they can really consistently nail something independently versus just looking at the grade. And I think that for a lot of them, they're actually getting higher grades than they would have in the past, because now they're just focused on can they get that standard and then move on.
I like that parents don't have to sift through the grade book to really understand what it is their students are learning and whether or not they know it. I think it's very clear when the parents see each standard in kid-friendly language, again, such as I can multiply integers, for example.
When we talk to them about standards-based grading, like especially at the beginning of the year, and we do get parents who are usually a little nervous for their kids taking our class, a lot of them seem to be really on board with it because, like I said, it allows for improvement over time, and it does focus more on the learning, which is really what parents want. Parents tend to get more upset when their kid fails something and they don't get a chance to redeem it, and now their grade is just going to be low forever, even if they do well on another project. They like that it has some redemption. Another thing that's been really nice for me with the standards is that if they didn't submit one type of evidence for a standard, so they do get a 0, if the parent asks, like, can they make it up, I can tell that parent they can. They won't get full credit for it. I can't score them independently because now it's late. They haven't shown it in proper time. But they're going to get another chance to prove this standard in a few weeks. So if we just wait it out, then I'm not getting a ton of late work assignments. Parents are like, great, thank you for letting them make it up later on.
So I personally have not heard much from parents. I don't know if the kids are relaying the information I've given them to their parents, or I think also because I teach 7th grade, the parents are used to seeing the 4-point scale.
I have not had a large number of pre-algebra parents reach out one way or the other. Some have, and they also want to know what assignments are their students missing that they need to do. And so that is the conversation. And I think once, I've talked to them or respond to their email, I think they understand it.
I actually think the kids understand it better. We spent the first 2 weeks of school really explaining like what that was. We went over what the world language rubric looks like and how when we grade things and how that transpires into the SVG rubric. And so the kids really understand when they get a 4, why they got a 4, and when they get a 3, why they get a 3.
They probably said it was 4 meant that I can do it on my own. I didn't have to ask for help. I didn't use word reference. I didn't have to look anything up. I knew my information and I had studied before. I prepared myself. I could do it. 3 was like I had to ask for a little help. And then 2 and 1, they start getting into, okay, maybe I use the translator. They know that means a lot of help for them.
I like the clarity that it gives because of what Shauna was saying. It's okay, this assessment is on this one thing, and I can easily look in my grade book and know who needs help with what without having to sort out what all the 70s and 80s and 90s and missing works, what all it means. It's just very clear. Where are my 1s and 2s? Who's had a 4 and suddenly got a 2? That's a clear indication of something that's going on. Who's getting 1s and 2s frequently? That shows up so clearly. So clarity is a big deal for me, and it helps me easily identify who needs help. And on these days when breakout groups and you've got all this stuff going on at once with the computer and distance learning, just being able to identify that easily makes a big difference in how I can run class. I like the way standards-based grading keeps the focus on what the students know and what they can do on an assessment, as opposed to how many assignments they can complete and turn in on time. So I think it is more equitable in that it really focuses on what the students know. I feel like it takes all the riffraff out. Like, so much of the time is, and kids get this, they're gaming the system. So much time they spend on jumping through hoops.
I think before we did SPG, I think it was really hard to get students to make up all the assignments that we were putting in the grade book. Like, we did an in-class assignment and it was only that singular day and they missed 2 or 3 days of school because they were sick. It was just like a matter of trying to make all these assignments up, whereas we know exactly, oh, they were absent on assessment day, that is what they need to make up, and that's pretty much really the big thing, I think.
Because we can't control the, what they do at home. We can't control the types of supports that they're getting from, parents or siblings. We can't control their family situation. Some students may have no time at all to do any work just because of other obligations, and they may not need to do that homework or that assignment because they understand the standard, and standards-based grading reflects that and allows them to show it without penalizing them for being sick or having to take care of a sibling.
Part of equity is that, especially virtually, we don't really know always what's going on at home with these kids. So some of them might miss an assignment one week, and then rather than just getting it docked and having that lower grade, they get another chance later on when maybe they're in a better headspace or they're in a better environment. It's kind of catering to everyone that they will get a chance to redeem themselves no matter what their situation is if they've made a mistake or forgotten something in the past.
I think it's easier to encourage kids with the standards-based grading, because the language that I use is progress, improvement. Okay, so you got a 2, so what do we need to do now? What types of things should you be looking at doing next week? Can you come and see me during office hours? Can you ask more questions in class? Can you review a video to try to revisit a topic? Can you try again on something that you turned in that didn't work out very well? How can you make that improvement? And it's encouraging instead of, well, you didn't turn this in. And I used to spend so much time looking up and printing out missing assignment reports. Oh my God.
I think it's definitely lessened the amount of time that I take to grade. I feel like I know exactly what's going in the grade book, and right after each attempt, I update the grades, but definitely am spending a lot more time grading and being stingy on what exactly goes in the grade book.
I would agree too. Overall, I guess less time. Yeah.
And it means that, I guess, how do I want to say it? I don't want to say it's necessarily, I guess it does equate to less time overall, because like think about like our office hours and I guess normal learning seminar. I feel like normally that's just us helping a kid. And then later we have to go do something with the grade versus now that's like the two birds with one stone. That to me really feels like that's where the time saving happens.
I'm taking less. It's more efficient for me.
Yeah. Instead of the actual grading, just giving them the feedback on it, which I would do anyway if I was actually then putting on grades. So I can really focus on the feedback part of it instead of the grade.
I would say with the feedback I've been giving, it's been much more reflective so that they know that in the future when they do it, that they can take it from here and then kind of go like there. Whereas in the past, I think I was pretty boring and it would a lot of times it'd be like, nice work.
Is less grades usually, rather than doing like one test per week like we used to, and reading grade here, writing grade here, and scattering them out. It is like the whole standard at the end is assessed, and they do a bunch of practice activities, and it holds them more accountable actually to actually do the practice activities, because they know once they get to the assessment that if they've done the activities, they're going to do well. If they haven't, then they need the support. They're not going to score. So it's holding them more accountable and making my workload a little lighter.
For me, it's about the same, maybe a little less. And the piece for me with the gen ed is I do have to be tracking who's not doing their work, because those are the kids who will not do well in their quizzes. And especially right now with remote learning, I'm very communicative with parents to let them know that their child isn't doing their work. Whereas if I was in school, I'd be more apt to snag those kids and pull them into learning seminar and handle it myself.
This is the first time, I think, knock on wood, where I haven't had kids just hound me at the end of a semester of what they can do to get an A.
It definitely makes making rubrics easier. Because 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you can write about in the rubric what that means, but it's not like this project has 100 possible points, this one has 20. It's always divided by 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's been easier too.
I know in my Power Math it's nice because I can come to their regular, their teachers in regular classes, and they know exactly what they need more work on. Like Shauna was able to tell me last week they need multi-step equations. Exactly what they're working on, and not like, well, we took a test on chapter 3, but there's 4 different topics in there. So just figure out, no one has the time to go through the test and be like, oh, look, you didn't do number 2 or number 7.
I will say that I feel like as teachers, we want to be able to wrap our head around something quickly and understand it, the ins and outs of it 100% at the very beginning. But I will be honest, I did not completely understand it. I would say that it took me the whole first quarter to really wrap my head around what I was supposed to do and how I was supposed to offer multiple attempts and things like that, while still making sure that the parents and the students understand where they're at and where they need to be. So just kind of like a heads up to teachers that it might not be something that you will understand right away.
Really isn't anything too challenging. The only thing I could think of is, again, more on like a general term, especially for teachers who have their system and have how they do things. It actually provides for more flexibility in the assignments you do a day. You have less, like, I need 30% in reading, I need 30% in this for each category. You get to choose ones that help them just overall learn, which can actually be difficult, though, when you're in such a groove and a pattern, to really decide what to do from the flexibility that it allows.
For me, I've had to come up with what's the best way to put a support net there for students who don't have the best study skills, to send emails and and things. And the piece that was challenging for me at the beginning of the year is how do I communicate that to the parents? Because before I would have the assignments and SIS and the parents could see that their kids weren't doing work. So now it's not visible to the parents if the kids aren't doing their work until they fail the quiz. And so I had to catch that at the beginning of the year to make parents more aware. And
It's challenging is kind of that middle ground. Is an 85 the same as an 89, or like is a 90 the same as a 99? But I believe that's still just, your mindset. And once you understand, like a student who's getting that 90 or that 91 is probably making very small errors. Should they be penalized for that? Do they understand the standard? At the end of the day, do they understand the standard? That is the goal, not if they're doing the busy work. So that's what I like about it.
And I'm nervous about this being an in-person thing. Like, if on day one they already get a 4, what is the incentive to participate on day 2 and day 3? And the reality is that when we're in school, we do have day 1 and day 2 and day 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say my average this year is more around a B+ to an A-, which is much more on par being a high school class to what the high school sees in their Spanish one. Whereas last year when we were doing grades and they couldn't get lower than a 50%, even on things they didn't turn in, they were kind of inflated.
But it does feel a little bit inflated. I think that, again, that has something to do maybe with the pandemic and maybe just being more understanding and saying, okay, cool, yeah, you did that. Even though it was late and it was on your own, you got 100% on it, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the 4, even though you didn't necessarily do it in front of me or with me. So that, to be fair, that might have a piece of it.
Kids who are doing things like late, and like acing it and like do it again, ace it in office hours. They do like a lot of things in office hours. I'm like, okay, you did earn a 4, even though it's like a week late or a week or 2 late. If they show mastery, even if it's late, isn't the grade book supposed to show that they know that stuff?
Like, I know at the beginning of the year, I feel like I should have spent more time talking to my students about what it meant, but I didn't really understand it 100%, so I didn't spend as much time talking about it. But when we use it next year, now I know more about what they'll ask and what they'll be confused about, so I'll feel more comfortable dedicating more time to that.
But I'm just picturing in the future it could be flexible, kids doing different things in different ways to show mastery, but still being on that 4-point scale.
And maybe even out the standards more or shift skills so the standards are more consistent in their complexity. I also think next year will be different because we can be doing assessment on paper too, and that'll change up our ability to assess more clearly. The results will be more definitive.
We're definitely like to continue with it. I've enjoyed using it this year. I think just the biggest benefit I keep coming back to is like the kids can look at the grade book, the parents can look at the grade book, I can look at the grade book and know much more clearly like what exactly they can do, what they struggle with, what they can't do, just by looking at the grade book. It's no extra, it's not like a separate tracker, it's not a separate, it's just the SIS grade book. The combos we could have, even down to the specific kid, as they go into 8th grade next year in the same building, could be like, well, Susie, looking at her grade book last year, she got nothing but 1s for equations. So like she can't solve equations. So you could really have detailed conversations even between grade levels as far as what this kid can do, what this kid didn't show last year, and so on. So
I do. I think the communication between the parents and the students and the teacher are a lot more clear. And for recommendations, I feel like things will be a lot more clear as well.
I kind of feel like it falls into the category of how much of an expert you feel that you are in the own field that you teach. So I'm okay with standards-based because it doesn't matter if we're on the fly, it could be a conversation, it could be anything, and I'm like, yep, you got it. But if you're kind of newer to the area, like you're new to a subject area, or it's your first couple years of teaching, and you feel like you're not even sure of what the kids do in the grade level before your grade or the grade level after your grade, you really are going to have a hard time with being able to, you're just not the expert quite yet.
I agree with Sarah. I feel like we've unpacked the standards so much, and we know where the kids are now, where they come from and where they need to be, I feel like as you really do need to know the curriculum.
As a new teacher doesn't know the curriculum or what they're supposed to know beforehand or afterhand, it is hard to do it on the fly.
I honestly think that it can be done in any class.
I think everyone should, but I think we all would have to have like the same language of, you know, you're learning and you're practicing to do well on your assessment.
I would like to continue using it. I think that it's effective, and I think that it puts a lot of pressure off of us and the students.
This is the time for grace. This is the time for flexibility. And this is the time for looking at things in a different way. So standards-based grading has really been the answer to a lot of the issues that I would normally struggle with, that have taken that struggle out and have let me focus on the positive. So I've been able to encourage my students more, because it's something about it has just really spoken to me. So I feel really good about what we've done with it for this year. It will be interesting next year, though, because things will be ever so different again. So we'll turn it on its head and go from there.